Before this video starts, here's a disclaimer. This video contains some sensitive subject matter that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please keep in mind, I am not supportive of any political, radical, or religious ideologies. This content is meant to represent my personal feelings and opinions, and they're not meant to offend or hurt anyone in any way, shape, or form. And also, this episode is not recommended for those who are 13 or younger. Viewer discretion is advised. With that being said, I hope you enjoy the video.
Welcome. Please enter the distress code you'd like to initiate. Code accepted. Distress code 5.26, I wasn't stressed until the internet made me stressed has been initiated. Thank you, my lord.
Hello, my angels. It's me, Lord Nicolina, and welcome back to Angel Rise. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for all the support on the last episode of Angel Rise, as well as the content I have released over the last couple months. As of right now, I don't have too many ideas for videos, but at the same time, I don't want to get too burnt out. So that's why I'm going to stick to 1 or 2 videos every 1 to 2 weeks from here on out, which has become my usual upload schedule from what I've left in descriptions of my videos. In other terms, I will still be active on here, but like I said, I am adhering to my schedule as I have had for the last little while. Either way, I do appreciate all your support and understanding, no matter how big or small it is. Getting into this episode's topic, this was something I initially discussed all the way back in episode 3 of the series, and has been a prominent theme in some of the other videos I've made. That being the stress I've gone through on social media, notably Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. In this case, this episode will serve as a sequel/remaster to episode 3. But I will be putting into more specific detail what actually upset me as opposed to basic descriptions like I did in episode 3. However, I do recommend you watch episode 3 first before you watch this episode if you haven't done so. With that being said, please get comfortable, and if you've got a box of tissues, please keep it close to you, as some parts are going to be emotional, and chances are I am likely gonna rage. Let's officially get into episode 42 of Angel Rise. Back when the COVID-19 pandemic started in March 2020, it turned out to be a somewhat good thing for me. I wasn't one to go to parties or hang out with many people outside my family. So in all reality, I was completely fine with being at home, and all the pandemic did was help me look up in hope for everyone affected to feel better. With the time I had on social media then, that's what it was all about. Checking in on everyone, making sure they were alright. I even took the chance and participated in some online activities on Instagram, which included a virtual spirit day for my high school and Quarantine-oween, Halloween in lockdown, in other terms. There was also some cool challenges made, including a pass the toilet paper along challenge, which was more than fitting considering toilet paper was all the rage around that time. I actually tried doing the same thing with school spirit, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. Yet, I showed as much school spirit as I could during that time, even if I couldn't actually be at my high school. It certainly was an amazing time, and I was happy in a time where countless people were not. In which case, I hope those people are doing okay now. We are social creatures after all, and we can use the interaction, whether in person or online. But just 2 months after the pandemic began, on May the 25th, 2020, the optimism I had towards social media, the joy I had expressing how I worked on there, was about to be altered for the worst. On that day, in the US state of Minnesota, an African American man by the name of George Floyd was forcefully asphyxiated by a white police officer, whom I won't name, but most of y'all will likely know who I'm talking about. It wasn't until the next day, however, that I first heard of it. It came through actual footage of the event on Facebook, and it was being passed around like wildfire, since it was an act of police brutality, which several incidents of this have happened over the last half century. I personally have not viewed the video, and maybe it's best if I don't. I won't lie, actions like that are definitely wrong. But how people reacted to it? This is where the chaos in my mind really takes off. The protests, the reshares of the event itself, it's all I was really seeing on social media at that time. And while I didn't think too much of it at first, soon the black screens came along. That's the point where I first lost it. I understood the situation, but I couldn't comprehend it. It's like I was looking at a black void. Literally. How the hell was that the answer to spread the message of the injustices of the minorities? Just to prove my point, I got some of the black clothing I wore, and I posted a selfie to Instagram on June 2nd, 2020. But looking back on this now, that honestly was one of the stupidest things I've ever done. I'm not even kidding. This is when I first realized that I felt like I was falling into an inescapable trap. Like I was being forced to be part of the whole Black Lives Matter movement. The very next day is when I snapped. After I saw a post on a high school companion's Instagram story of a cartoon comic strip depicting the ongoing phenomenon, with a woman holding a Black Lives Matter sign and a man holding an All Lives Matter sign, and then the same for breast cancer matters and all cancers matter. And the caption is what got me. One of a few I'm going to mention throughout this episode that stick with me to this day. Which is, this is how stupid you people look. Referring to the man holding the All Lives Matter sign. That couldn't have been more further from the truth about how I really am. So seeing that caption felt like a major slap in the face. My face. Like I was the freaking target. After that, I had enough there. I took a break from all of my social media accounts. Something which I've never done before. But it had to be done. And afterwards, I did get a DM, direct message for short, from the same high school companion who posted the comic to their story, with them saying how important it was to prioritize my mental health over social media. It is a little ironic to me looking back on it, but it definitely shows that they did look out for me there. Even to this day, it still sticks with me. Things did calm down after my break, which lasted for a week. After that, It seemed like I never lost my rhythm for the next few months, paying tribute to my time in high school as I had been before, while also getting Nicolina off the ground, as I had just created him not long before this. However, throughout the fall, as I was beginning my brief tenure in college, Facebook was falling victim to another kind of madness I was seeing. A hockey mom I knew from my days as a timekeeper, whom I also won't name, was sharing what is arguably the most bullcrap thing I've ever heard of. That being, COVID-19 was a scam and planned all along, and the restrictions were an act of tyranny. The conspiracy itself was based on a coronavirus action plan meeting in 2019 where health experts were making plans in case a wide-scale coronavirus outbreak happened. I emphasized in case for a reason, because looking back on it now, it turned out to be a big-time coincidence. So this really knocks that theory out cold. But seeing that being used to prove a point about COVID-19 being planned, honestly, how small-minded could people like that be? I mean, the pandemic did scare quite a few people, but saying it's not real is like saying that aliens are real. And those posts from that hockey mom, I saw on a frequent basis. And in late October of 2020, I was once again boiling over the pot. I made a Facebook post stating that COVID-19 was obviously a real thing, and the restrictions were in place to keep us safe. And who was the first to respond to it? If you guessed the hockey mom, you're absolutely right. And the second I saw the notification from her, I literally thought, alright, you imbecile, come at me. You can bet what she said makes my blood boil to this day. She said, first off, do your research. Research, huh? Research on why that theory is wrong? You know what I'm saying? Yet, what I did in response, which I consider stupid by today's standards, I forgave her for saying that. I know I am a person who does forgive people quite a bit, but if this happened today, I wouldn't have given her a chance, let alone have her do what happened next. I literally had a DM chat with her about the sites that proved that COVID-19 was a whole scam and an act of political corruption. But I didn't go to any of these sites once I snapped out of this mini trance I was in. And honestly, that was the best thing I could have done in that case. I wasn't falling for that bullcrap. I know on Earth what actually went on. But, unbelievably, I didn't block her then. It took another post on Remembrance/Veterans Day about the same thing for me to do so. Only this time, it was referencing the Canadian Armed Forces with the caption saying, but not exactly, our freedom will all be for nothing. Clearly, this woman was delusional, and I wasn't going to put up with her any longer. Apart from that, I was still pretty much fine, and all the while, I was getting started with something new on Instagram. At the beginning of October 2020, I started up my first Nicolina Instagram account, showing him off as the male-female mix and arrow-ace character he was at the time. In that time, I also became fast friends with Tylerina, a fellow Rosalina OC account, and it felt like at first, Nicolina could thrive without anything bringing him down. The next month, on November 10th, I came across my now dear friend Kestrel through their Rosalina OC Kestrolina. They would become more significant later on as the month progressed, with me eventually meeting their boyfriend Ira through his Luigi Instagram account. That's what made me realize that I could have online friends who truly cared about me, considering I have been more used to having friends in real life. And I wasn't too sure on how I felt about having online friends at the time. However, right at the end of the month, trouble lurked around the corner again. Only this time with male Mario OCs. The first one to pop up was a red Luigi OC, and immediately he took a liking to Kestrolina and became the first husband of theirs. Not going to lie, that made me quite resentful and jealous. Was I really about to lose my new friend right off the bat to a sudden appearance by a nobody? This didn't seem right to me. No way in hell. Yet 2 more OCs, both Mario ones, came in as December rolled around. And as my fellow OC companions, a few of which I had met beforehand, had their Rosalina/Princess OCs taken, I was the only one spared in that time. Nicolina was still free, and that's the way I wanted him to be. Yet I feared she was next in line. And on December 21st, 2020, my fear was realized. I posted a Nicolina edit of him greeting someone under a mistletoe, since it was only 4 days until Christmas. Not long after I posted, I felt pretty good about it. Until he commented on it. Those who know about the situation know who this person is. However, for those wondering who that is, it was a blue and teal Luigi OC named Texic. The comment was a reply to the caption, acknowledging wanting to kiss under the mistletoe. It definitely seemed harmless enough, yet my gut was telling me otherwise. Not even a few minutes afterwards, I get a DM request from him, and I did take the chance to chat with him, preparing to say no if he asked the question to take Nicolina as his romantic partner. The question was indeed asked, and my no answer was prepared. I said I had no interest in letting Nicolina go with someone I just met. But he was not going to accept that. He did plead with me for a few minutes, and I relented. But I wanted to keep the romance low-key, so that not many people knew about it. The next night, that's when it became full-scale. As he was curious, or acting like he was curious, about sex. Now, I'm no sex expert, and around the time, I was new to the concept. Like only a couple months type of new. So in another move, which I classify as dumb in today's standards, I taught him it, and he went absolutely nuts. I should have known at the time he was playing dumb and pretending not to know what sex really was. From there on out, carrying in to 2021, his way with Nicolina was granted whenever we roleplayed together. And though quite a few times I did do some non-sexual roleplay with him, it was really all about the sex. Even when we said goodnight to each other, he'd play with Nicolina's body. And even sometimes, he would ask me to make edits of Nicolina and himself in a sexual matter. And I allowed it. Because I was pulled into the feeling that I had to allow Nicolina to be with Texic, due to my people-pleasing nature. Yet, I did have one chance to end it off. That was on Valentine's Day 2021, where Texic made a post on Instagram stating how lonely he was. Looking back on this now, I should have let him go right there and then. But my pleasing nature got the better of me, and I commented as Nicolina that I loved him. And he didn't feel so lonely afterwards. Man, am I facepalming about this right now. All the while, I, along with Kestrel and Ira, were in a group chat involving all the Mario OCs, Texic and the other male ones included. To say it was just as uncharacteristic as my roleplays with Texic is an absolute understatement. This was beyond anything I could comprehend, but I remained complacent to doing sexual activity, which included edits, as I was around my new friends, which will become quite significant later on in this episode. A good majority of what was posted there was sexual, and that's where I started to feel uncomfortable, which included Texic sharing an edit of Nicolina and a Pauline OC getting hammered by him and another male Mario OC. I say hammered as in hard sex. It was only rare that I saw anything not related to sex in the group chat. I even went as far as to show non-sexual edits and artwork that I made, which was what I wanted to share. But it was rarely acknowledged, as sexual content overwhelmed it by a long shot. Then came June 28, 2021. I was having one of my chats with Texic, which had become more rare at the time, but in the middle of doing so, I decided to go outside where my mother was, as she was working on the garden in the front yard. And I had a talk with her about how I was concerned about falling in love, and the male Mario OCs as a whole. She gave me some reassurance, and said that it was alright, that I was okay with being single. The way I wanted Nicolina to originally be. After that chat, my mind was made up. I was going to separate Nicolina from Texic. When I told him the news, he did take it somewhat well. And I did tell him that it was fun while it lasted, which in retrospect was a complete lie. After I said goodbye to him for good, I did feel quite a sense of relief. And I really didn't feel hurt. Yet, it would take time to manifest, as more danger lurked around the corner. In the midst of my separation from Texic, there was yet another civil rights controversy that came to light. But it wasn't African Americans at the forefront this time around. It was Native Americans, or indigenous people, whichever of those you want to call them. More specifically, the children. It was through the discovery of graves, child's graves, at residential schools that this controversy came to light. In case y'all don't know what those kinds of schools are, they were schools that operated between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, run by religious leaders, mostly of European descent, specifically targeted at indigenous children. And they were made specifically to try and rid those children of their beliefs their respective tribes have believed in for generations, and convert them to common religions such as Catholic or Christianity. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, though I believe in God, I have no specific religion that I am attached to. And in the last episode, I revealed that I had partial Native American ancestry, which I get from my father's side of the family. In terms of what I brought up, it can make sense when I say that no one should ever have their beliefs stripped away, unless they're downright malicious and delusional. Getting back to the issue itself, much like with the Black Lives Matter movement, it was a firestorm on social media. However, it was bound to be much worse for me than the year prior. There were photos I saw on Facebook of vandalism on churches. Yes, you heard me right. Vandalism. They mostly included bloody handprints to represent the dead indigenous children, and even some churches being set alight and burning to the ground. All I have to say is, what the actual hell? Whoever those people are, they are clearly sick in the head. Also, the main protesters, they were no better. They were wearing a certain colored shirt I honestly can never unsee that has symbolized the whole movement. Orange. The color orange. It was meant to represent an indigenous kid's shirt that they wore to a residential school during the time they were around, and it was taken away from them. Honestly, I really hate to be harsh, but after what happened last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, this was rubbing salt in the wound. I don't care if it was directed at me or not. First the black screens, now the orange shirts. Just what the actual That wasn't all though. Another caption that makes my blood boil to this day accompanied a post about this movement. This one was, "If you're not angry, you're not listening." Oh, I was angry, alright. You can bet on that. But I was not going to stand for any captions trying to sway me in that direction. Especially not when I've become so freaking vulnerable. But I stayed on, despite this new mess I was seeing. And I was on edge for a good majority of July. And when August rolled around, it did seem like everything calmed down. Yet it took one more post on an Instagram story from another high school classmate of mine, which I can't remember exactly what it said, but it did relate to what I mentioned earlier. At that rate, I snapped once again. And I decided I would take another break. However, it was going to be for an indefinite period of time. I wasn't going back until I felt for sure that I felt okay doing so. It didn't officially begin until August 17th, 2021, when I made posts of these drawings right here. Honestly, this at the time was the worst I felt about being on social media. And every day on there felt like all users were trying to brainwash me into believing all this nonsense that I saw on my feeds. It was not okay. It really wasn't. I had to escape from all the platforms I was using. All except one. The platform I'm talking about is Discord. For those of you who don't know what that platform is, it was originally created in May 2015 for the purpose of gaming chats through the creation of servers, mainly those focused on strategy games. But in June of 2020, its focus was shifted to all-purpose communication. So all types of servers, from video games, to sports, to music, to movies and comics, you name it. All servers of that purpose were on there. I actually didn't notice that it existed until around late 2020, when it was recommended by another online friend I made. But it wasn't until January 2021, when I was on a 3-week break from Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that I joined and created my own server, fittingly named Lord Nicolina's Heavenly Palace. And when I took this new break in August 2021, I shifted my focus to Discord specifically, because I did want to keep in contact with some of my closer online friends, Kestrel and Ira included, though it would take some time for me to start talking to Ira on there. As for the break itself, it did start quite well, relieving even. But I was soon to realize that the chaos of social media was about to carry over to television, and it was reminiscent of what I faced against that hockey mom. It was advertisements for the 2021 Canadian federal election, with commercials for the respective political parties taking jabs at each other. There was absolutely no question that this rubbed further salt into my already fresh mental wound. And it was only gonna get bigger by the second. This led me to make a decision that I stand by to this day. I would never vote in any election. You heard me right. I chose not to vote in that election, nor any other election, for the rest of my life. Now, in reality, I was intrigued by politics since I was 14, and did vote the year I became eligible to do so. But after all the hell I went through up to that point, there was no way I was going to take that chance again. Absolutely no way. I wasn't going to be that easily persuaded. During all this, however, remember how I mentioned it would take time for me to see what really happened between Texic and I? Well, it was during a counseling appointment, talking about what I was going through, that I realized what happened was not as innocent as I originally thought. I was abused by him. That is right. This monster was using Nicolina for sexual gain. The events I mentioned all added up, and when I realized that, I was on the verge of tears. My instincts in December 2020 were right all along. This blue and teal Luigi OC was a freaking monster. And he slipped in between my fingertips. Even right from the beginning, I should have let my instincts lead me to say no to him. And firmly at that. Plus, the biggest red flag of the whole case was him calling me quite a few names. Names you probably wouldn't expect to come off as bad, but they were bad in my books. They include tight, hot, and worst of all, good girl. The "Dirt Girl" saying comes off as cruel to me. Maybe he knew Nicolina was a male-female mix when he first saw him, but completely ignoring that in favor of his feminine side, that honestly completely enrages me looking back on it. I also tried one time to prove to him that Nicolina was a male-female mix by showing that she did indeed have a male genitalia. But as you likely guessed, he wasn't buying it. I held back on telling anyone else about what happened for the next few weeks, partially because of the other social media issues I was having. It took a comic I made not only about my main social media issues, but also my abuse, that the truth got out. It was the second half of this comic that I revealed I was abused. While I was uploading it to my Discord server, more specifically my comics channel, it was after pages 4 to 6 were uploaded that I was gonna get my first response. And that would come from Kestrel. As I was about to upload pages 7 to 9, they started typing, and I was like, I haven't uploaded the full comic yet. Why are they typing? But after those pages were uploaded, that's when Kestrel's response popped up, saying that they knew something was off between Texic and I. I was confused at first. How did they know I was hurt by this monster? But there is no way I was hiding it now. I confirmed to them that it was true. Yet, I still had no clue how Kestrel knew something was wrong. Eventually, I would realize that why Kestrel felt something was amiss between Texic and I was because of, you guessed it, the godforsaken group chat. The way Texic and I talked was what concerned them, because they faced a similar thing in the past. But that is a story for another time and place. The word did gradually get out about my abuse among my closest family members and a few other online friends, Ira included. And it did actually result in what my 2021 Halloween comics were about. Me getting back at Texic for what he did, and even referencing what started my social media chaos. Getting back to what preluded the then indefinite break, the residential school grave discoveries, it was starting to look like it was about to fade into the back of my head. It was only getting started. 3 words then popped up to describe the whole ordeal. Every child matters. Now, some of you may think those 3 words aren't enough to cause such stress in me. But at this rate, there was no changing my mind. Yes, every child does matter, and they deserve to be safe. But if you attach it to something like that, in my books, it does become pointless. Then came what I can describe as the peak of my anger of the whole situation. Canada decided to create a holiday based on this that happens on September 30th. You want to know what that holiday is called? It's called National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I'm not kidding with you all. Every time that pops up in my head, it pisses me off to no end. a holiday to recognize those affected by such events? If I didn't have any holidays to hate then, I certainly did now. Why not recognize it every day? If you all can tell by now, this was no doubt the biggest peak of my anger towards social media, the news, and IRL at the time. This is what made 2021 a terrible year for me, especially the first 8 months. Social media and the news, I felt, were becoming shells of what they were when I started on them. Peace was prominent throughout them, and now it was like a war had broken out. I was caught in the crossfire, mentally wounded, screaming, and wanting to cry every tear I could leak from my eyes. I had enough. My break lasted into the start of 2022. I still wasn't ready to go back. That was around the time I started this podcast. The midway point of January is where episode 3 was made. I thought after I made that episode, it would be the point where I could leave the stress behind and it would be over with. But I was wrong to think that. It was just bound to get worse. Remember that conspiracy theory I mentioned earlier about COVID-19? That was the first thing to come back to haunt me in 2022, in the form of the convoy protests starting near my 21st birthday. These took place near border cities in Canada and the US in response to vaccine mandates for truck drivers crossing over the border. The second I noticed them in the news, it was only a matter of time before I was shaking my head in disgust. Trucks blocking the border in Windsor and various other border cities. And I even saw a video of a crowd of these protesters singing the national anthem. I'm sorry, but hearing those particular protesters singing that is a clear insult to this beautiful country I live in. That is not the Canada I know and love. I'm not kidding. And one night when I was coming home from timekeeping a hockey game, I expressed to my mother how concerned I was with them. She did say people had the right to protest, but I knew these protesters were far from in their right mind to do so. People do have the right to express themselves. That is for sure. But at that rate, and I didn't truly realize until just this year, I was scared of protests. I'm not kidding. I'm actually scared of them. It started with an incident in April 2019 during my grade 12 year of high school, which was about a protest addressing education system changes. But it took until this whole mess for it to manifest into what it is now. Once that mess did die down, however, and honestly, thank God it did, I was no question relieved. But that was only brief. As the war zone-like feel I felt towards social media and the news was literally about to show. It was near the end of February that war broke out between Russia and Ukraine, when Russia launched an invasion on Ukraine. I wasn't going to pay any mind to it. None. But then, the support Ukraine hashtag started popping up as a result of Russia not sitting well with other countries. Obvious political bias, if you ask me. Whether it's politics or war, you can tell I wasn't going to take any sides. Neutral was the way to go for me. Yet, I was still getting caught in this media crossfire. War had broke out in social media, news, and now real life. And I feel you can tell that I was feeling targeted, even if nothing was directed at me. But by mid-March, once again, things settled down. And by then, it was 7 months since I began my initial social media break. I started to contemplate returning to the platforms I was using, and I did think it was okay to go back at the time. So I decided that when April rolled around, I would take the chance and do so. After 8 months away, I was back on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I was determined to get back on track. I blocked all the male Mario OCs, Texic included, and limited how much I viewed stories on all those platforms. I wasn't going back unless my guard was up. Also, I tried a feature on Twitter called Hidden Words. This feature allows users to hide words or content containing any words they don't wish to see. And based on all I said, I was no doubt putting that to good use. For around a month, it really did seem like everything was going to be alright. I got rid of posts relating to Texic, any posts that were explicit looking, and shared videos from this channel. It definitely felt great to be back. However, like the update video to be made on June 5th, 2022 mentions, it would state otherwise. When May rolled around, the National Hockey League's Stanley Cup playoffs also came in, and my favorite team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, had qualified once again. This time, they were facing off in the first round against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Coming off their best season in franchise history in terms of wins and points. Up to that point, the Leafs have been eliminated in the first round 5 straight years, including losing a 3-1 series lead against the Montreal Canadiens the year prior. And I could tell the fans were not having it, which I wasn't happy about, considering how dedicated I am to the team. The Leafs are a Stanley Cup level team. All they needed was a giant push to get them over that hurdle. But it wasn't meant to be once again. Game 7 on May 14th was the deciding factor, and the Lightning got the best of the Leafs. I didn't watch. Instead, I followed along online, because I knew all too well how the fans would react if the Leafs lost. At that moment, it was only denial and grief that I felt. It really did take just this one hiccup for the last straw to break. I stepped away from those platforms again until I decided what I was gonna do. In other terms, I left for 8 months, came back for over a month, and then left again. All because of this. Were more restrictions in order? Did I have to block more accounts? What must be done? As the end of the month rolled around, I decided that enough was finally enough. I was going to quit all those platforms. I didn't want to do so, but I felt there was no other choice in the moment. My mentality was becoming exponentially fragile with every passing moment. So I told everyone I knew on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that I was through with using them. After which, I deleted all accounts I had on each of those platforms. As for Discord, that was my new safe place. Over the course of my 8-month break and subsequent retirement from Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, it became my main source of contacting my online friends. I didn't know it, but it was the blessing I needed in such turmoil. My era with the big three was over. The Discord era had truly begun. Even though I had found my true serenity on Discord, the damage had been done. Even the news did their damage as well. Whenever something about civil rights, politics, or war came up on them, I either got really angry or didn't care at all. It even affected my behavior a couple times, notably at the end of September and mid-November of 2022. The day after my mother and I moved in with my grandparents on her side, it was National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Yes, our moving day was September 29th, and September 30th was the day after. I never had expressed my distaste towards the holiday to anyone I was closely associated with. So on that day, I did tell my mother about it. She did take it well, and even expressed her distaste about a holiday she disliked as much as I disliked National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which I won't share for the sake of privacy. I also got it out to my online friends in the form of me updating my Discord profile for Halloween, which was also accompanied by the status September 30th. They were just as understanding, with Ira even saying something like the residential school crisis should be recognized daily, something which I did bring up earlier. In case you didn't catch the hint, considering September 30th is the day before October begins, and around that time, Halloween recently just became my favorite holiday, that was the perfect add-up to start up my Halloween celebrations a little early. Looking back on this, if I didn't know how to cope with my despisal of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, this was the way for me to do so. Something I'd give a name to in the future, but I'll cover that towards the end of the episode. For what happened in mid-November, November 19th to be exact, my mother and I were grocery shopping together, and she was buying items for a food drive that was taking place at the store. And what it was for, I'm still shaking my head about. It was for Ukrainian refugees from the Russia-Ukraine war. I really don't want to sound harmful or ignorant, and I'm all for food drives. But this one wasn't sitting right in my head. It really wasn't. I didn't want to partake in it. We did it anyways. Even as I was hoping we wouldn't. Now, please don't judge my mother, but she did ask me to give the groceries we bought to donate to the people running the food drive. And the second we approached the stand, I froze. and started to shake. I was on the edge of screaming. No joke. I instead let my mother give the groceries to them, and we headed back to the car. Once on our way home, I burst into tears and apologized. My mother did comfort me, but did say that I should limit the chances of my emotions or beliefs stop me from doing any good. She is right, but what happened there? It really goes to show how badly affected I was by what I saw on social media and the news. I made a drawing when we got home discussing my distaste for the war itself, with Nikolina using a torch to burn both Russian and Ukrainian flags, further emphasizing my point that I was not picking a side. Please do keep in mind, my mother was and is still very understanding about the whole situation. But honestly, outside of those, nothing else major happened in the time after I initially quit. Other than me making videos for this channel based on my feelings about social media and society as a whole, notably the skit video Endless Trauma, alongside my drawings, comics, and OC lore. Like I mentioned earlier, this felt like an endless war. The posts and articles were like gunshots, hitting me in the head. This didn't feel right. The temptation to quit was there and I took it. I was done with social media. I was done with the news. I felt it was game, set, and match right there. And I had the incidents to prove it. However, in mid-December 2022, things were dying down once again. And it looked as though that finally the chaos was over once and for all. So I took the gamble, and with my guard up at an all-time high, I decided that I would return to social media. But there is only one platform I would choose to return to, and that was Instagram. I made that choice based on me wanting to have a more fun approach to social media, like I originally intended. Yet, how was I to do so without the same crap happening to me again? It was simple. Make the accounts private. Private accounts were something I saw during my original time on Instagram. And in the app's case, if you wanted to follow said private account, you had to request to follow. And once the account gets the request, they can accept or decline it. If they accept your request, you now follow them. Vice versa, if not. And much like Twitter, Instagram had the hidden words feature. So I put that to good use as well. However, my return didn't come into effect until 2023 started. More specifically, January 2nd. I created new accounts, but only my personal and Nikolina accounts. Though it did stink that I had to find accounts that I originally followed, I was more picky with who I wanted to follow. Nothing to do with politics, civil rights, or war. Sports, video games, art, and roleplay was the name of my game. I made it clear on the first posts I made for my new accounts that I was through with the past and wanted to start fresh. Most importantly, I wanted to do what I truly meant to do on social media. Have fun and be no one else but me. That's what I stuck by. I only posted whenever I had thought of a good prompt for roleplaying, whenever I stood up for my feelings, whenever I cosplayed, or if something special was going on in my life, like a day trip or a hockey game. Plus, I didn't look at stories as often, as like mentioned before, some were enough to make me step aside initially. Everything was going like clockwork as a result for the first little while. The hell I went through was in the rearview mirror, and the new era had begun. This approach towards social media was just what I needed to get back on track. Yet I did limit my time on Instagram because Discord, like I mentioned before, had become my main social media platform. And soon, I was to get into the Splatoon fandom, making my own roleplay account for my Inkling OC so keen in the process. I did find the majority of accounts I originally followed, some active, some not, along with reblocking the accounts I originally did in April 2022. I also did manage to find a few new accounts, notably a Shiver one, which further expanded my love of the Splatoon idol herself. I would frequently comment on their posts as Solakeen, whether it was as a serious affair or roleplaying, and it felt like I found a new friend as opposed to just a new account. I also learned from this person that they were very adamant about players getting along in Splatfests, and that immediately reminded me of how I wanted my renewed social media experience, as well as my life in general, to work out. Especially during the Shiver Fry Big Man Splatfest. This person was very much doing their absolute best to spread their message, and them and I would frequently chat about said topic. I won't lie to you all, this person not only expanded my love for Shiver and the Splatoon franchise as a whole, but despite their own anger issues, they had the courage to spread the message of everybody getting along, just like I did. Little did I know, however, this serene feeling I had was not going to last long, and another war was going to erupt, both figuratively and literally. In early October of 2023, it was Israel and Palestine's turn to cause chaos. Tensions between those countries have been around for decades, as opposed to Russia and Ukraine. And like the Russia-Ukraine war, I completely shrugged it off at first. I wasn't surprised. I knew what to do. Not even the support Israel hashtags, nor the free Palestine ones, were enough to sway me. But just 2 days before Halloween, I took a chance with viewing Instagram stories again, as I had been doing so pretty slowly with the people I followed. And there came the next one that made my stomach drop. And all the bad memories from my first stint started flowing back in. It was a post about art to support Palestine with the tagline, "If your artwork doesn't support Palestine, it serves no purpose." Wait, my artwork? Or others' artwork? It doesn't freaking matter. That post took a jab at artwork. Out of all things. I cannot put into enough words how pissed off that made me. And it still does. Artwork to support a country during a war? That to me is propaganda. Freaking propaganda. This is not the mid-1910s, not the early 1940s, no other era outside of the 2020s. Posts like that are what caused me to originally leave in the first place. It didn't set in until after Halloween, and I was back on my guard. So I did the one thing I never thought I would do again, and that was to step aside from Instagram for a few days. I thought I had escaped what had been haunting me for 3 years at that point. But my escape was only temporary. The break lasted from November 4th to 8th, and when I got back, I was ready to bring in my strictest measures to how I was going to work with social media. Absolutely no way I was going to view any stories unless they were from my own accounts, or if I viewed them on my Nicolina and Soakeen accounts, since viewing them on my personal account was doing me no good. This worked for the next 2 months, and on the 1-year anniversary of my return, I just hoped nothing else bad would happen from there on out. Yet, I couldn't have been any more wrong to assume that. It was late January when the next hiccup happened, and it's one I deem to be on par with the residential school crisis as the worst of the worst. It was through a Twitter post shared by Kestrel depicting Insane Clown Posse's Violent J supposedly being a pedophile, but it was later found out to be a video made with AI. Originally, Kestrel, Ira, and I believed it to be true, and we immediately eliminated ICP songs from our Spotify playlists, and Kestrel changed up the face paint design of Kestrelina, and I did the same for their other OCs, notably removing the hearts from the nose area. We were convinced that the video was telling the truth. It was a few days later that it was proven to be an AI video. I was relieved at first. We all were. But as the reality set in, and we were talking about other musicians we listened to, my mind was boiling. So much to the point where I had to step aside from Discord for a moment. But it didn't help me calm down. I was preparing to erupt. How could some idiot accuse a famous rapper of something so vile? I made a drawing of Nicolina, which took just over an hour, with him giving the right middle finger and holding a sign saying, social media. I went back onto Discord, and I wasn't holding back any longer. All the anger of the last 4 years, I violently released. And by violently, I mean it. I swore on a level I never thought I would. Going off like Yellowstone, erupting 3 times in the span of 4 years. Surmised in the following words, which I began with. if I didn't want to rip social media to shreds in June 2020, I certainly want to do now. All of my anger was getting out not only towards that little idiot who made the AI video, but those who made the posts which have haunted me for so long. I even swore at my mother through text messaging, which she did find alarming, but knew what it meant. It was time for another break. No doubt about it. Didn't matter that I wasn't using Twitter. I was stepping aside from Instagram again. I won't lie to you all. This was genuinely the biggest breaking point I had with social media. 4 years, all colliding at once, to form the biggest eruption I've ever had. My trust had all but faded. This break only lasted for the weekend, and after then, I severely limited my time on Instagram. It did work for a bit of time, but not for long. On Valentine's Day 2024, after a brief internet outage while playing Splatoon 3, that's when my faith in social media truly hit rock bottom. The mental wound, first made in May 2020, had grown to the point where it was no doubt going to be permanent. It felt more like a burden than a safe haven. I briefly vented on Discord about it. Then Kestrel chimed in on what I was saying, and I'm quoting them here. I really think you should delete Instagram. You haven't had anything good happen on there. Plus, if it's stressing you out this bad, I don't understand the point of being on there. They were absolutely right. What Kestrel said woke me up to how bad I was actually affected by Instagram. I badly underestimated how much damage the app did to me. I thought Facebook and Twitter damaged me the worst, but never did it cross my mind that Instagram was the main culprit. My abuse happened on there. The stories threw me out, like I was nothing. The civil rights movements trying to push me to do something I already knew. It started on Instagram. So it was. A week after that chat, on February 23rd, 2024, and after taking another break to decide what I wanted to do, I made the tough choice to quit Instagram for the second time. This time, for good. It was definitely tougher than last time, because I really felt things had improved. But they only got worse. This really was for my own good, even if it meant I had to leave my new social media friends behind, especially the Shiver user, whom I actually talked to about my social media struggles. And no doubt, they did feel bad that I had to go. Yet they were happy to have come across me, considering my kind nature. Unlike the last time though, I didn't delete my accounts. I left them up as they were, preserved like a monument. I only occasionally log in, but never again will I post on any social media platform other than Discord. After I made things official, things have definitely gotten better. Yet, like I mentioned earlier, the damage to my mind was done. My social media experience between May 2020 to February 2024 as a whole was honestly a terrible period in my life. It changed the way not only I viewed social media, but society as well. I believed from the get-go that mostly everybody I met was a good person in some capacity. But I knew afterwards that this wasn't true, and I had to know who to trust. With my abuse, it was a bunch of male Mario OCs looking for love, and my trust was falsely put in them, especially toxic. All they really cared about was the sex in love. Nothing else to suggest that they truly even cared about my friends and I. It was Texic who was the exclamation point that confirmed that those male Mario OCs were pure trouble. The colorful caps telling me black and white lies, with Texic's being the darkest of them all. In the case of all the civil rights movements, along with political and war movements, which were the main culprits behind this stress, I chose not to be part of any one of them, if I already knew to be kind. I've mentioned this before, both in and out of videos, and this was also said by famous YouTuber Markiplier in his video titled Respect. And this is a phrase I've stuck by for as long as I can remember. I will be honest with you all. I do not care about your race, skin color, religion, personal beliefs, or choices unless you use them for detrimental purposes. What matters is that you are human and you are to be respected, whether people, myself included, like you or not. That's the big issue I feel that's in the world nowadays. Even since May 2020, there's hardly any respect, kindness, and loyalty. That's the big reason why I've made videos on this channel surrounding these specific behavioral problems in the world. Videos like The Real Bigots, Poisoned Mind, Misunderstood, and Day of Mourning. The last of which is my response to National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. These weren't made because I wanted to make them. I wanted to spread the message that civil rights issues were really caused by us not getting along, respecting our values, and attempting to lure us into false senses of security. And that's the same I feel for social media. The way I witnessed it being used is further proof in my mind that behavior in many people, no matter the age or gender, has deteriorated beyond the point of reasoning. But in my case, this has really taught me that it doesn't have to take a movement of any kind, a vote in an election, or a relationship to prove that I'm a kind person, and that the screen can be a tool of destruction when in the wrong hands at the wrong time, both physically and especially mentally. So, to everybody watching, please watch out for yourself and others. Let no one control what you believe in. Stay true to yourself. Be careful of who you trust. Look at all sides of the equation. And most importantly, please stay safe online. Take measures if you have to, and never be afraid to step aside when the burden gets to be too much. There are people who do benefit from using social media, and I did for a time, but in the end, it was not for me. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this officially concludes Angel Rise episode 42. I'm not gonna lie to you all, this was the toughest episode I've made up to this point. While writing the script for this episode, there were a few times where I have cried and raged at the same time. And I'm not usually one to talk about specific world issues, let alone talk about them on social media. However, I feel this can be used as a major outlet to express how social media has affected me in these ways, and to spread the message to not only improve our behavior on social media, but to improve our overall behavior as a species, and to show that it's just not one side or the other. We need to take care of each other and spread kindness, whether offline or online. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave a like and share this with your loved ones. Spread the word about Angel Rise and the Lord Nicolina YouTube channel. For those who are new here and would like to join this journey of mine, then please feel free to subscribe to join the Blue and White Angel Brethren today. Click on the notification bell when you subscribe so that you are notified whenever I release new content. And check out my other videos too. Thank you all so much for watching this remastered episode of Angel Rise. I hope you all have a great day or night whenever you are watching this. And until we meet again, my name is Lord Nicolina. Be strong, stay positive, and as always, God bless.